guy, Twin Maker. We are going to be recapping the 49ers offseason program, and all the fun stuff that's come out news about the 49ers. Be sure to stick around.
Yes.
Let's go get him. Let's go get him today, man. Let's go. Hey, dominate on three. 1, 2, 3. Dominate.
What's going on, everybody? Thank you guys for tuning in. Like I said, I'm your host, Rohan Chakravarthi. You can find me on Twitter at Rohan Chakrav. Everything's in the description. But with me today, I've got a special guest. I've got Mr. Twin Maker himself. How you doing today?
Man, I'm doing wonderful, man. It's blessed to be here on this wonderful Monday. We all coming in from the weekend, getting in on this Monday. So I'm just excited still to be here, able to check in, tune in, and have a good time and talk about the one and only, the greatest franchise there ever was to ever touch the field, the San Francisco 49ers. So, yeah, let's get it cracking. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. And before we start, make sure to tell the chat and everybody where they can find you.
All right, check me out on YouTube. I'm at Twin Empire, man. You can find me on there. On Twitter, it's Twin Empire ×2, So you can find me on either one of those platforms as far as right now. And just like I like to say, sack, since we love to talk about football. You know what I'm saying? Sack that like button, man. Subscribe to the channel, hop on, man, and get involved in the great content, man. Let's have a good time. Talk about the team that we all love and adore, which is the San Francisco 49ers.
Most definitely, most definitely. And for those of you that couldn't catch that, make sure to just hit the links in the description. I've got all of his info over there. Shout out to the chat. Shout out No Border Sports. Thank you for tuning in. And then shout out to ShotJ. Thank you also for tuning in. But like you said, let's talk about some 49ers. This amazing franchise. Everybody got to be talking about them. And first of all, we got this offseason, right? This offseason was somewhat unprecedented because there was a ton of news. So many different headlines that popped up. It's like we're talking about something new every single week. But overall, now that we're kind of in the realm of looking back on the offseason, what did you think about the 49ers and what they did this past offseason?
Man, I know this is kind of crazy, but I thought we kept it simple. I say KISS is an acronym, but keep it simple and sweet. I think that's what we did this offseason. We kept it super and sweet, man. We the strength of our offense and our defense, we continue to add pieces to it. And we kind of, I think for us, the biggest part for me was just looking at our offensive position coaches that we seen so many people leave. But I think Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch did a great job bringing in some veterans, bringing in some guys who've had experience in coaching to bring them into a team that we have, which is a mix of veteran and young guys coming in, man. I was just excited for us what we did to continue to push that culture that we do have that everybody seems to love, whether it's all our free agents that come in. They're like, man, y'all got a different culture over here with the Niners. And so I'm just glad they was able to ingratiate these new coaches in there and we can continue to push the culture forward. So, yeah, I'm excited, man.
Yeah, most definitely. And I mean, you brought up something very interesting, right? The 49ers had a ton of not only roster turnover, but coaching turnover this past offseason. Around 14 assistants either had a new position or were brought in. That's a record-breaking change. And really for the 49ers, it's especially interesting because their structure, especially offensively with their coaching staff, they don't normally have an offensive coordinator. Last year was the first time in the entirety of the Kyle Shanahan era where they had an offensive coordinator, and the only reason was they didn't want to lose Mike McDaniel last year, so they promoted him from the role that he had before, assistant head coach, to an offensive coordinator role to take him away from the Miami Dolphins, who eventually got him the offseason after that, right? But now when we look at it, the skill positions, quarterback coach, wide receiver coach and running back coach are all different in 2022. You've got Brian Greasy manning the quarterbacks, Anthony Lynn manning the running backs, and Leonard Hankerson manning the wide receivers. Just specifically on the skill position groups, how do you think that impacts the 49ers?
Honestly, I believe we're all in a transition. I think we've all got accustomed to seeing our 49ers maneuver in a certain particular type of way on the offensive side. But I think transition from Jimmy to Trey Lance and trying to come on, Kyle Shanahan is a genius, right? We all know this. And I think there's part of his brain that has been minimized because of the quarterback position. So I think him bringing in some guys, he can be able to expand his full compass of what he thinks an offense should look like. And so bringing in these new guys, he can tell, hey, this is where we're trying to go. This is what we're trying to do. And so I'm excited for the new wide receiver coach, for the running backs coach. We even got a new tight end coach, along with the quarterback coach as well. And so this offseason has really been busy for the Niners and what we're trying to do this upcoming season. So I'm excited because there's going to be so much new life for the players who have been there because they're trying to get to know these new coaches. But then also when you're bringing in these young guys who's coming in as far as our new draft picks, man, they're going to be excited as well, along with the free agents. So, man, I think this is going to be a beautiful time for the 49ers and what we're going to try to do for the next 5 to 6 years with this organization and with this coaching staff that we do have here.
And you said it perfectly right at the beginning. Kyle Shanahan's the head of the snake. He's really the forefront of this offense. Everything else that circles in and out, really, while they play a significant role, they don't play the significant role that Kyle Shanahan plays. I think with him being the cherry on top, everything else can function even with coaching turnover as we've seen. But talking about the offensive coaches, there's one thing that they all have in common, the three names that I mentioned, and that's playing experience. Kyle Shanahan, that's something that he hasn't necessarily had on previous coaching staffs, was the primary guys having playing experience. Brian Griese played in the NFL. Anthony Lynn played in the NFL. And Leonard Hankerson played in the NFL, all at their respective positions that they're coaching at right now. And that's important because you have that extra ear on game days in your players that you haven't had in years past, right? Like a voice is a voice. But a voice that's played is a voice that's unique because not many players played in the NFL and then transitioned to these coaching careers and are successful in that. And although Brian Griese is relatively new, Leonard Hankerson and our other guy, Anthony Lynn, both have had pretty successful coaching careers to this point with players vouching for them. And then Kyle Shanahan himself, like we said, the mastermind behind this offense, vouched for Brian Griese, who was looking for a coaching job. And so that's why I have a little bit more confidence in this group right now. The loss of Mike McDaniel is definitely hurts, right? Because our run game coordinator, the mastermind behind that, is gone. However, we've got Anthony Lynn. How are you excited about Anthony Lynn going into 2022?
I'm extremely excited about Anthony Lynn, knowing him from even just being a sports fanatic. Seeing what he did in Denver, as far as starting his career as a running back, and then seeing him transition throughout his time after he retired, continues to stay close into the league itself. He had a head coach position with the San Diego Chargers at the time. Now they're the Los Angeles Chargers. The LA Chargers or whatnot. But seeing him have a young Justin Herbert, they're continuously to be competitive as far as him being a coach. And even though he's no longer a head coach, I think his experience with a new quarterback, which he had with Justin Herbert, which everybody loved, but he was extremely productive with him, and just his ability to understand what running mean. A lot of people don't know unless he started off in Kyle's dad's system, and so starting off in his dad's system when he was a young man and now as an older gentleman, to me, that's awesome because they have a relationship. They have a bond. He's seen Kyle transition from a young man to a head coach, And so I'm excited because they have a relationship. They have an understanding. And then they have the capability to communicate in a way that's extremely effective to teach the young running backs that's coming out, because we had a wonderful running backs coach for years, as we can see with 5 rushers that led our rushing game over the last 5 years, and he was an awesome job. His name slips my mind right now, but y'all know who he's talking about. He's 72 years old. He's been a wonderful staple in the San Francisco 49er organization with Kyle Shanahan. But even though he's left, somebody with that much experience like we do have with Anthony Lynn, I'm excited. The type of run game he's bringing in, it seems like we're going to be more so not as reliant on the speed, but more so on the strength and the physicality of the offensive line to run in between the tackles as well this year. So I'm just excited to have him in the locker room, man, his experience. Thank you for him. Shout out to my guy in the chat, Bobby Turner. Correct. You know what I'm saying? Even though he's not here with us for this year, I'm excited to have Anthony Lynn, who was actually underneath Bobby Turner as well. So that's so good to have the person who can be a leader once one leader leaves, to have an understanding and a familiarity with what we was already running. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, Anthony Lynn, I think his impact already has been seen on the 49ers running back room, right? When you look at what Anthony Lynn's done in his past stops, he's got Melvin Gordon and Austin Eckler, two backs that were pretty good pass catching backs, but also worked well in the power game. Then last year in Detroit, he made DeAndre Swift, one of the better running backs from the class before. He made DeAndre Swift into a top five pass catcher out of the backfield in Detroit with an offense that was extremely stagnant, right? And
Yeah.
despite the amount of volume that DeAndre Swift had, he still was very productive because he was transformed into that type of pass catching back. But Anthony Lynn also had Jamal Williams there, the counterpart, and Jamal Williams was a pure power back that they got from the Green Bay Packers. And now when you see here, you've got Tyrion Davis Price, who the 49ers just drafting, who's going to play around 222 pounds. Elijah Mitchell bulked up to 220 pounds. And then you've got a pretty big guy in Jordan Mason, the undrafted free agent out of
Yeah.
Georgia Tech, who's around 220 pounds as well. So really, Anthony Lynn and company are imposing that physicality into these running backs, right? They're looking for that as a part of what they're going to do with this running back room in 2022, and I'm excited to see how does that translate into real game success, right? Because Anthony Lynn obviously has the head coaching pedigree as well. He can be an extra ear in extra voice in Kyle Shanahan's ear, but I want to see this is somewhat of a change for our running back room. How does it translate to on-field success?
Yeah, we got some big boys, like for real, for real. Like, I mean, come on, we like when we began to win, we had Matt Breida and we had Raheem Mostert. Those guys who got some burners, you know. Like, I mean, when we look at the Sports Gen next stack, who had the quickest miles per hours like over the last 3 to 4 years, it's Matt Breida and Raheem Mostert. Like Marine, like the Maserati himself got up to 23 miles per hour. So like that's awesome. So no longer having that much speed, but we having their strength in between the tackles, and also they have the speed to get on the outside. I'm extremely excited for what they're going to bring to the table, because one thing these guys, like, let's be real, the NFL has become a little more finesse, because it's all about passing, right? Everybody like, hey, let's go back that's getting a shotgun 35 times a game and let's throw this thing. But with the 49ers, we've always been known for our physicality, and to have some guys come in there who are strong, who don't mind taking the contact and giving the contact first. I'm so excited that we have depth in that position where you can run a EJ out there. We can run Trey Sermon out there, because I believe he's going to have a really good year. I know everybody's really talking about my guy LSU TDP. I mean, Ty David Price. Yeah. But I really believe Trey Sermon, he's going to be sneaky. He's going to get the opportunities to go in there and show why he was a high draft pick as well. And so I'm excited that first thing first, we have a really good RB room, and then to continue to just build upon that and give Trey Lance the ability to be able to hand the ball off and get down in third and short situations and show himself as effective as he can be with the team that he's going to go into with in the 2022-2023 season.
Yeah, and I mean, you talked about a couple of these additions and a couple of mainstays, right? Now, looking at the entirety of the offseason, shying away from just the running back room, what do you think was the best move that the 49ers made this offseason?
All right, this is my opinion. My little 2 cents here. My opinion is this: Rich Scangarillo, adios, see you later, arrivederci, hasta mañana, however you want to say it, whatever language you want to say it in. Bye-bye. Jimmy Garoppolo, thank you for everything that you've done. We appreciate you, but bye-bye. I think the biggest thing that we did this offseason was tell Trey Lance, you are our QB1. And to tell Brian Greasy to come in to cultivate this young guy, to bring in an environment that's conducive to growth, but also an environment to say, hey, man, you're going to be a leader of not only a franchise, but the franchise of a Joe Montana, of a Steve Young. So, man, that right there to me was the biggest thing, because that was telling everybody out there that, hey, we trust this young guy. We're putting our stamp on this young guy. And we love Debo. We love George Kittle. We love all our skilled position players as well. Like, I'm cool with that. But this is football, right? This is the Niners. We've been known for our QBs. So to give the keys to the young boy and say, hey, man, it's time. You know, so that's what I was most excited about, because then it shows us as fans that you trust the things that we don't see necessarily, you know, out in the front, out what's out in the media and things of that nature. So like I'm excited about that, saying, hey, buy Rich Scangarillo, bring in Brian Greasy, Trey Lance, here you go. Here's the keys to the kingdom. And you finna become a prince, and then you're gonna walk into a king. And so I'm excited about that transition that we're about to happen here on our quest for six. You know what I'm saying? How about yourself? What you thinking?
I think that that's a very very interesting thing. And before we go ahead, I wanted to give a shout out to Jesse. Thank you for tuning in. You know, I had to bring out Twin out here, top one guest here, according to the fan base here. But when we go to the offseason, right? I think the Scangarello move, it was an interesting move, right? I think the 49ers probably wanted to let him go. Like he obviously used the excuse of going to Kentucky, but he hasn't really helped any quarterbacks wherever he's gone. In Denver was the clearest scenario. Everywhere else, he's worked with established, experienced quarterbacks. Denver was one scenario where he hadn't, and Drew Lock did not develop under his presence. Drew Lock was a highly touted prospect who was drafted in the second round and didn't develop at all, which with Rich Scangarello's help. Jimmy Garoppolo obviously didn't seem like he developed either, and Rich Scangarello reportedly wanted Mac Jones. So the locker room culture seemed like it wasn't great under Scangarello. I'm going to go with a different way. I'm going to go with an addition instead of a subtraction, and I'm going to go with Charvarius Ward. I think that he was the second best cornerback on the market. I'll say that behind J.C. Jackson this offseason, and the 49ers got him, and albeit at a pretty cheap price. I know 14 million a year doesn't sound that cheap, but when you look at how the contract is structured, the cap hit for this year is only 3.8 million, meaning the 49ers could really hold other contracts down while paying Charvarius Ward a minimal amount. While it increases next year, it's essentially a 2-year deal with an out clause with the potential for an extension after next season. So to me, I'm excited about Charvarius Ward. I think he has cornerback one potential. His stats over the past 3 years in man coverage have been phenomenal, especially last year where he broke out against a ton of quality opponents. So Charvarius Ward's a top cornerback, and the reason I liked him over a guy maybe like a or not JC Jackson, but a guy like Stephon Gilmore or an aging cornerback. He's only 25. He's going into the breadth of his prime right now, and I think that that's important for a 49er team that is rising in youth, right? You have a young quarterback, you have a young team overall. I think it's important to go the youth direction rather than compile yourself with continuous veterans and have to experience roster turnover at significant positions every single year. I like the Charvarius Ward addition. He's proven himself statistically. He has the demeanor that the 49ers want. You know, he has that dog in him. You know, Jimmy Ward, he's got that personality in him. But the 49ers now, they have Charvarius Ward, who has that type of dog in him. They've got Jimmy Ward, who's got that dog in him. Sam Womack and Ambry Thomas have had, like, reportedly had that dog in them too. So I just want to see that energy, you know, that really fight from this team this year, and that's something these guys present to me. So I really like the addition of Charvarius Ward as a locker room presence, but also for his play.
Hey, and look, if I had a number 2 pick, I'm definitely with you on that. I can pick it back on you. Like, I mean, let's just keep it a buck. Charvarius Ward was an undrafted player, man. To be an undrafted individual, to do what he had to do, to go to a team like Kansas City and to rise amongst the ranks and become an established cornerback in the NFL in today's market, man, I'm excited about that, because I think he's going to bring in, first and foremost, he's Southern like I am. I'm from the South, from Mississippi, you know what I'm saying? Big ups to Lil Mooney, you know what I'm saying? That's what they say. He said, call me Mooney, you know? So, Mooney, what's up to you, my guy? He's coming in there bringing in some swag, coming there bringing in, like, he has that chip on his shoulder, even though he's getting some bread now. He still has that mentality like nothing was given to him. Hard work, dedication, going out there, make sure he do what he needs to do. And so when you got a Sam Womack, when you got a guy like Ambry Thomas, and you have Lenoir coming in there, like, you're going to say, hey, he's bringing in that type of energy. Like, man, I wasn't picked out. I wasn't, like, people stepped on me. I was on the Cowboys, you know what I'm saying? And they let me go. I went to Kansas City and I made myself somebody. Now look at me. So to me, that humility, that hunger, that desire to be great, to me, that's going to be awesome in our cornerback room, because you got to have an E-man, you have a Verrett, you have these young guys coming in. And so to me, I think just the culture itself in our cornerback room would be awesome. And I think D'Amico Ryans will excel having these guys who's coming in there hungry and really ready to put their mark on this league. So man, hey, that was a great pick. I'm not hey, let's go with it. And big ups to my boy Jess. How you doing, man?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I mean, we talked about it, right? But the 49ers haven't necessarily done everything correct this offseason. In really no team has, right? There are
Yeah.
always some little flaws or fallacies where you gotta let somebody go, or you can't. Yeah, you made a bad signing or something like that. And so, what's one thing that the 49ers should have done they haven't done already, or shouldn't have done?
All right. So when I think it's the offensive line. I think most people would see it like it's a glaring, like, ooh, it's shaky because there's a lot of unknowns, you know. I think last year we had the mix between like veterans and some young guys, but the young guys didn't necessarily get any no time. And so now this year, the veterans that was there have left now. And then, you know, we got McGlinchey coming off that injury, the quad. So there's a lot of question marks. But for me, I'm just going to trust Trent Williams' ability to lead. I know we always talk about the quarterbacks, so like the running backs and linebackers leading teams, but I think Trent Williams have this. He's a savant to me, like mentally. I think he brings like just the smarts, the familiarity with the offense, and the ability to galvanize the offensive line because we all know they have to work as in unison, you know, in one. And
Yeah,
so that was my biggest issue. Is like I'm not necessarily sure what I'm going to get, but one thing for certain, if I'm Kyle Shanahan, one thing I'm not going to do is expose my young rookie quarterback into a situation where he's going to be back there tap dancing in the first 6 weeks of the season. So I have to trust that there's something going on in that offensive line room that we don't necessarily know about. That he says, "Hey, I'm willing to tell Jimmy you can sit back, relax, recover from your shoulder injury, and to bring in Trey Lance and say, hey." These guys who we may have not seen last year, whether it was a Aaron Banks and a Jalen Moore, they're ready now, or they're prepped to be ready now. And so the only thing they need is repetition. Same thing what Trey Lance said. I need reps. And so giving these young guys with fresh legs, who's strong as an ox, full of testosterone, ready to go out there and prove it, I think this is going to be an opportunity to see these guys go out there and do something special. But it is a question mark. So hopefully everything goes well. And that's why I think the running back and Anthony Lynn will be such a big, prominent role in what we're going to do in training camp coming up soon.
I think that's a great point. And if you asked me a couple of months ago, I probably would have said safety because the 49ers had a chance to sign a not necessarily a premier safety, but a starting caliber safety in free agency this offseason. There were a ton available. You had Terrell Edmonds, you had J-Ron Curse, and then you had even guys like Jaquaski Tart, like we could have brought back. You had Devontae KZ, you had Keanu Neal, you had Jabril Peppers, Landon Collins, and maybe even a Sean Elliott, right? Am I saying that all of those guys are super talented starting caliber safeties? No, but they're at least average starting caliber. And when they signed George Odom, it really indicated to me that the 49ers had trust in what they currently had in Talanoa Hufanga or in Tarvarius Moore. And those wishes have been granted. It seems like the 49ers have had a ton of praise for Talanoa Hufanga. Jimmy
Mhm.
Ward said him and Hufanga are the best safety duo in the NFL. The coaching staff has been raving about Hufanga's instincts, and I really like now that the entirety of the team has been like we know what the team looks like now. I understand why. 49ers are probably going to play cover one man this year, right? Because they wanted to last year when Verrett was healthy, but when he wasn't healthy, they had to resort to other systems and other schemes because of the personnel that they had. But now that we have Travarius Ward on deck, I think the cover one man situation is where we're going to go again. And that allows a guy like Hufanga to play in the box where his instincts and his mind, which have developed over the year because of a year of experience, a year in the defense, I think that that's where those talents are going to flash. And that's why I think if you have Jimmy Ward's the overhang and Talanoa Hufanga in the box, that's going to help the 49ers. So I'm going to shy away from safety, and I'll go with your point as well, the offensive line, because just because the rest of the team really is talented. On apart from the unknowns currently at quarterback, I know we shouldn't say that because we personally know what Trey Lance could be, but just because of the lack of an 18 game season sample from Trey Lance, I'll call it an unknown at the moment. But I'll go with the offensive line because right now the interior of the offensive line is all an unknown, right?
Yeah.
If it's if it's Aaron Banks at left guard, I think he's the most proven of the interior offensive linemen, and he hasn't started a single game in the NFL. That's what I mean. He could have started last year, according to Kyle Shanahan, and I'll take his word for it. I think Aaron Banks, after like making his body, like trimming some of the fat, being a little more agile, and adding strength, I think that he's ready to start, and he's also going to be alongside Trent Williams, which should help him in his development at left guard. Then you have Jake Brendel now probably going to start at center. At least he's the favorite to start. But he's only started 3 games in his career, and in his only time when he started, he got a season-ending injury back in 2018 after starting only 3 games. So he's a huge unproven guy, not only in his talent in terms of can he play, but also in his consistency. He hasn't been able to play 18 games in an entire season, so that's something that we haven't, at least in the starting world. So that's something we have to see. And at right guard, we don't know who's going to start. We don't know if it's Jalen Moore. We don't know if it's Daniel Brunskill. We don't know if it's another option. So to me, that's the question that has to be answered. And I agree with you. I think the offensive line, while it still has the potential to be a top 15 unit, we don't know what it is right now.
But one thing I do like is that Trey Lance had an opportunity last offseason to get some reps with Brendel. And
Exactly.
so to me, that's awesome because the Niners are sneaky. You know what I'm saying? Like they keep some stuff under like in tuck and key. You know what I mean? They're like, I ain't gonna show y'all all my hand, but the Aaron Banks, yeah, we draft him as a high pick, but we go, put him off to the side. We got the Jalen Moore had opportunity to play 1 game, got off in the halftime, like you still need some time, put your back, bring in Compton. And so to me, they was kind of doing a little like they were doing 2 things at once, which is extremely difficult. And a lot of teams don't have the ability to do that, because they don't have the talent that we had. And so I'm quite curious to see how they really feel about these guys like a Aaron Banks and like a Jalen Moore, because it's going to be interesting. And with Brendel being our center coming up possibly in this year, I think Trey Lance is going to be communicating with Kyle Shanahan saying, hey, this is who I trust. This is who I feel most comfortable with. And what we're going to see far as our offensive scheme and what we're going to do far as our play calling is going to be, I think we're going to be having like a couple of little new widgets in there. And so that's what, for me as a Niner fan, I'm so excited about, because I know we're not going to see exactly what we saw last year. And there are going to be some growing, issues and mistakes. And I'm fine with that, because I believe, we went through it last year. Our first 6 weeks, it was like up and down, and we had more of a veteran team then. And so I think we should give our team the same grace and mercy starting this year for the first 6 weeks to kind of get together, gel with one another, knowing there's a lot of expectation with the team as far as our talent overall that we do have. But when we are losing a Tart, when we are losing a Thomason, when we are losing Alex Mack, all these guys were, Pro Bowls or close to being Pro Bowl guys, we do need some time to kind of grow with one another and try to bring some type of chemistry there. So I'm extremely excited as far as what we're going to do, because one thing the Niners aren't going to be is mundane and boring. We're going to be extremely entertaining, you know what I mean? So I'm so excited for that, man, as far as the new season that we're bringing in. And yeah, man, I'm just excited.
Oh yeah, definitely. And even with that, right? Obviously, with the negatives on the offensive line that we've mentioned, there's all of course the positives. I've also been a little more praising of Jake Brendel recently because he fits exactly what the 49ers want, right? Like you said, the connection with Trey Lance has been there. He was the guy who Trey Lance worked with all offseason last year with the second team, Jimmy Garoppolo with Alex Mack, Trey Lance with Jake Brendel. And additionally, Jake Brendel's athletic. That's the one thing the 49ers have continuously mentioned about him. Trent Williams raved about that. Kyle Shanahan raved about that. And Trey Lance himself posted a 9.94 raw athletic score coming out of college, the best in his class. He wasn't drafted out of UCLA, but still the athlete in him was there. And it's being shown, at least in the early part of training, or not training camp, but minicamp and OTAs, it was shown there. So that is something the 49ers require in their offensive linemen because of the amount of movement that they have with the outside zone scheme. Exactly. And so when you have a guy like Jake Brendel that's able to move from the center position, it's similar to how Alex Mack was last year, and you're confident in that. Jake Brendel was also a hand-picked guy from offensive line coach Chris Forster, who brought him when he came from Miami. So Brendel was a backup, right, in Miami for a majority of his career there. But Chris Forster still thought that he'd be a quality offensive lineman for the 49ers, brought him in. He opted out of the COVID year in 2020, but the 49ers still brought him in for a 1 year deal last year and now signed him again. Like there's something there because you don't bring back the same offensive lineman 3 years in a row now. There's something there with Jake Brendel, the 49ers view, and also the coaching staff in the front office have mentioned his name multiple times in press conferences. So there's some intrigue with Brendel, of course. Now it's just can that translate to an on-game to in games where he just doesn't have that experience right now. But
especially as a center too. Just like as a
exactly,
center, like you don't. That's a position on the offensive line that you don't play around with. Left tackle and center, like you need to make sure those guys are on point physically and also mentally as well. And so, like you brought a very very good key point. I think it's up here that he has some type of understanding of the offense and he's able to adapt in those situations and then also take what those things that he know and then have the physical abilities to do those things as well. So yeah, that I'm with you on that. Yes, sir.
yeah, and you talked about the mental part, right, for Jake Brendel. And the main thing that Jake Brendel has with that mental part, Trey Lance alluded to it this past week during training, during the media availability. Jake Brendel calls all the protections. He's
Yeah.
had he has the entire year in the system, and despite Trey Lance's knowledge of calling protections, he did it in during his entire career at NDSU. Jake Brendel calls all the protections for the 49ers. Offensive line. This is with the first team as well. So Jake Brendel has the mind for it. He has the understanding of the offense after spending the entire year with it last year. He's got the athletic profile and the vouching of the coaching staff. That is something to be at least somewhat optimistic about before watching him actually play in training camp and in the preseason.
Most definitely, man. Like that's the thing. Like we know that Kyle Shanahan wants to implement something a little bit different that a lot of us haven't seen yet with Trey Lance and with the skill position players that he do have. And so, like, that's one of the things that I can't wait for training camp. All the wonderful individuals that we have going out there to go watch and see what's going on. And they might can't necessarily tell us, everything that's going on, but you're going to get a good vibe to see, like, okay, I see this is a little bit different, especially the guys who was there last year going back again this year, and they can kind of do a comparison and contrast as far as what we're seeing as far as the styles and play calling and so on and so forth. I think it's going to be very instrumental in how we're going to what's coming next with the Niners. So yeah, man, that's what's up. I'm excited about that. I'm definitely geek.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I mean, you talked about training camp. That's the next step. But let's talk about the step that just passed, right? OTAs, minicamp. What's just your take on it? What did you think about everything you heard from OTAs and minicamp?
Man, honestly, this is what I felt like. I felt like it was so cool that OTAs is like really coming to, like, we got a lot of young guys who were just drafted and like unsigned, undrafted free agents as well. They're coming into our system. And so I was just so excited for these young guys coming to it and establish culture and franchise. It's extremely hard just to be a man in general, but then extremely hard to be a young man playing a sport like football, and you have all this new wealth, you have all this new type of media around you. And for them guys to come in there to a culture level with the Niners, man, I was just excited that these young guys have an opportunity to learn from the best. Whether they have an opportunity to learn from, I mean, I know George Kittle and them came in kind of later on in the OTAs, but just knowing that these guys are coming in, it's an expectation that you have to say, man, I watch these guys on television. I watch these guys on in the playoffs. And so that alone gives these young guys the ability to be sponges. And then when these guys come in, when they say something, they're so ready to receive this information. So hearing what's going on in the wide receiver depth room, hearing what's going on the offensive line, what these young guys doing, whether the ones we drafted or even the pose of the Zach, I can't say his last name. I don't want to murder it, but Zach, what's the tackle name?
Oh,
Right.
you're talking about?
Yeah. Zach Burkett, like when you have these guys coming in and they know of a Trent Williams and they know of a Mike McGlinchey, they sitting there like, man, this
Oh,
is Trent
no.
Williams. You know what I'm saying? Like they like, dude, this is all decade Trent Williams. I'm about to be able to learn from one of the greatest left tackles to ever play. You see what I'm saying? So like for me, that's exciting for these young guys to go into OTAs and knowing that the system and the verbiage of what Kyle Shanahan shares, I know it's a lot. You know what I'm saying? I know there's information overload. I know there's a big transition, but when you have those guys coming in there and talking to you, helping you along the way, releasing some of that pressure off you, man, that's what I was excited about. So like, whether it was George Kittle showing up early, whether it was Juice showing up early, even Debo coming in there. Like, to me, when you have a Danny Gray can look over and like, dog, that's all pro Debo still coming in. Like, so I was like extremely excited that these guys have some of the greatest players to ever play. I mean, the greatest players to be playing right now at this time. They can sit there, learn from, and really find themselves as an important piece to what we got coming up. So, man, I was just excited about hearing all the wonderful things coming out of camp. And so, yeah, that's my opinion on that situation. What about yours?
Yeah, to me, I'll use this phrase, but use it cautiously, and I think it's a blessing and a curse. The
Okay.
49 when we went into OTAs, we heard about a ton of injuries that happened in the offseason. Not necessarily that happened in the offseason, but surgeries that required them to miss time. Starting in the offensive line, obviously you have Mike McGlinchey out right now. Trent Williams wasn't there at the beginning, but you had Mike McGlinchey also out with the torn quad. Then so you have replacements filling it. And that's just not at the offensive line, right? At wide receiver, Debo Samuel wasn't there. At what do you call that? Defensive line, there were a couple of guys not there, like a Nick Bosa, and people recovering from injury, like a Mo Hurst. At linebacker, you had Aziz Al-Shire recovering. You had Fred Warner out there, but not practicing because of a lower body injury. And then another guy on the offensive line was Daniel Brunskill with knee tendonitis, right? Al-Shire had a similar thing with the knee issue. What I mean is, all these injuries, they suck, right? You want your top guys out there. But in addition, it's a blessing because you get to see in the early parts of the offseason which of these young guys, which of these guys who haven't necessarily had the opportunity to showcase their talents can flash in the opportunity that they receive, right? Like a guy like Justin Skule, who's coming back from a torn ACL, now gets to play at right tackle to see to show the 49ers does he have anything still left in the tank, right? At left tackle, a guy who the 49ers somehow seem extremely intrigued about over the last couple of seasons was Colton McKivitz. They started him a couple of games last year, especially in Week 18 when Trent Williams was injured. They started Colton McKivitz at left tackle. He's there. He's out there right now, right? And so, to me, it's like you get to see all these different young guys performing in roles that you might not necessarily see from them with all the guys there. And so you know what you have with those stars that I mentioned, right? Or with the role players that I mentioned. You know what you have. They're experienced veterans. But with the guys that you don't know what you have, these young rookies, you get to see what they have and then go into training camp with a greater diagnosis of who potentially makes your roster and who doesn't. So that's why I say blessing and a curse with a caution.
Yeah. Hey, to me that makes totally good sense, man. So yeah, I'm with you on that. So that's a great point made.
And I mean, really, what my point kind of boils down to is the 49ers have a ton of competition at various points on their roster, right? Be it defensive line, be it offensive line, receiver. I mean, we can mention this position, and I'm sure, like even quarterback, you have four quarterbacks right now in the quarterback room, although one of them likely will be off the roster by the time training camp comes. Like you have a good amount of a good amount of players at every position where you can have sufficient competition, and that's important because like the point I make is like when you get these guys that flash out in expanded roles that they might not necessarily have during the season, you see who to keep out of that competition bunch going into
Yeah.
training. And so yeah, that's what like it's a good thing because you always embrace competition. You want to get the best players out there, but you also get to see what young guys have as well.
And I put that in my notes too as well. I was like, I think we would have a great camp because of our offensive line, our wide receiver, our DB, and our defensive line groups. I think we brought in so much depth this year, as we did last year and years past, but that will only create more of an environment that's conducive for growth, conducive for competition, and conducive for we're gonna have some real dogs out there because there's no way you can look around to your left or look to your right and see weakness. You know, you got talent, you have experience, and these guys are trying to go out there and get it. So to me, a lot of teams don't have that type of depth, and I think that's always been a wonderful access or a wonderful asset of ours is the depth that we do have. I know we have the wonderful guys in all these skill positions, but our depth in a lot of these different positions has really kept us relevant over the last couple of years. So, like you just said, man, having that strong competition, these guys coming in throughout the offseason, and as we see the roster spots begin to dwindle down from 90 to 90 to 83 and 83 to 72 to 8 to 72 to like 53. I think we're going to get the best out of every individual that's out there in multiple positions. So when we eventually see our offensive line group, just like we have to trust them that, like, yeah, we might not know the names, or they might not have the time together, but one thing we will know, they've been battling, they've been fighting, because it's great competition. Same thing with the defensive line. Like, come on, man, our defensive line is ridiculous. Like, it's stacked. And so we're going to know again, them boys out there fighting. They trying to keep their jobs. They trying to keep a position because they know this team is going to be what? Successful. Same thing with our cornerback room, man. Like, for everybody was talking about last year, how, I mean, after the injury to Jason Ferret, and how we were sitting over here picking up Josh Norman and my man's from like Snooks, or I don't know what your local grocery store is, but like from 7-Eleven or so on and so forth. Like, we got some boys out there who's trying to say, hey, man, I was drafted last year. I want to be the number 2 DB, or I want to beat out Emmanuel Mosley as the number 1 DB, or so on and so forth. It's like, nah, man, we got Javaris Ward, we got E-Man, but now Ambry Thomas is like, nah, man, I want to play. I felt what it felt like to be an instrument player, or a great player at the last year. Like, man, I want to keep that. Or you see the Lenore's like, hey, man, I want some of this too. I was in there early on against the Eagles, and then I gave up a couple deep passes. I got put on the back burner, but he's like, I want to get in there again. You know what I mean? And so, like, seeing that, the same thing with Hufanga. Like, he's sitting there like, oh yeah, I hear y'all talking about what's my man's name, Travarius Moore, but he's like, now that Tart is out the way, I want to be the one. I heard Jimmy Ward say, hey, man, we got the baddest 2 in the land. So he's like, yeah, I feel that way too as well. So, like, that's only going to make Moore play better. That's only going to make Odom play better. And to us as Niners fans, they're only going to make our team better. So, like, I'm extremely excited about what we're going to have in the training camp coming up.
And you talked about it perfectly, right? With the cornerback room, now that you have 2 solidified starters, you have quality level depth, right? You expect injuries to happen at some point. Travarius Ward, I think, missed 4 games last year, and then Emmanuel Mosley missed maybe 6 games or 5 games last year. I think he played in 12 total. So you're going to miss games. That's just a prerequisite, especially if you're on a 49er team. But the quality level of depth now elevates from a guy like Josh Norman, who, like you said, was off the street, to Ambry Thomas, a guy who they have high hopes for, was a 3rd-round pick and added a significant amount of muscle this past offseason, or Samuel Womack, who has flashed early in training camp, possesses the size and possesses the length the 49ers want, as well as the speed, right? That top-end speed at the cornerback position. So there's a good amount of players that the 49ers can have, and also a couple of versatile players that the 49ers can have. And I think that that's important at the cornerback position, given how the 49ers like to move certain players from the overhang to the slot or to the outside based on certain situations. And I'm talking about Mr. Swiss Army knife Dante Johnson over there, who played at every position pretty much on that back end last year. So I think the competition is certainly important, and so I'm just excited to see who wins at what spot, especially that slot corner spot.
And I think another thing you brought up earlier about our defensive coverage that we might be playing. I think you said, was this zone man or
Yeah,
man,
yeah.
cover one man, right? And so a lot of people don't know that a lot of times why they're looking for these big plays out of Jimmy Ward is that he was playing like he was really just protecting. You know what I'm saying? He didn't have the ability because of our injuries on the edge as far as our cornerbacks. He couldn't use his mind the way he wanted to, because he had to make sure that nobody got behind us on the deep end. You see what I'm saying? And so,
Yeah.
like, I'm so excited because first thing first, D'Amico Ryans, this is his 2nd year as DC. So I'm excited he has a 2nd year coming in here and really begin to, this year he's not coming in and learning. He's just picking back off what he did last year. But knowing that he has these guys on the corners who can actually play man to man, and his mind is like, dude, our D line is still going to be nasty, maybe even better this year than it was last year, if barring injuries, right? And
Right.
so for him, a lot of times last year we were just playing safe. We saw all the people getting like, what's my guy named Dante Whitner, right? I've always loved hearing his perspective about what he thought our corner should be doing. But I realized it's just because D'Amico Ryans didn't trust him. Like he just had to make sure that he played these deep zones and third and longs because that's where we got ate up off a lot of times. But this year, I believe he will be able to put our corners in man-to-man coverages, seeing some exotic blitzes, and allow Jimmy Ward to what? Diagnose the play early on and get these interceptions that everybody's saying you don't get. You know what I mean? So, like for me, when you're not just a casual fan, but when you're really looking at these schemes, you like, oh yeah, if we stay just decent in health wise, I think the Miko Ryans and our defense are going to show different parts and more of a versatile defense. And I'm excited about that because I think Jimmy Ward, if he stays upright, can have a Pro Bowl / All Pro season. In my opinion.
He could. They just ain't gonna give him the award because he talked too much, and they a little salty out there. But you made a great point, right? Jimmy Ward definitely in that category, and now he'll have a more solidified role, right? He'll be in the overhang, or he'll probably be in the box. He could play in the slot as well, but it's not like too much responsibility because there's so much more talent on this team now. And I'm not just talking about quality talent, I'm talking about depth as well, right? That defensive line is re energized. You've got Nick Bosa there. You've also got Drake Jackson there. You've got Kamilka Ture, all these new additions in a way. And then you've got Travaris Ward on the back end in the cornerback room, as well as a developed Talanoa Hufanga. So there's a lot more players to carry the weight as well. So it's not all on Jimmy Ward, although I still expect him to talk that talk and walk that walk. That's what I expect from Mr. Jimmy Ward out there. But he is of that caliber, and he definitely could play to that level. It's just he ain't gonna be awarded. That's
But I love Hey, but I love that Jimmy brings that swagger though. Like, man, I don't care
oh,
what you
yeah.
say. He be out there talking this talk. I love seeing him like throughout the offseason. You have the media pick up his sound bites and him just talking about Hufanga and just the defense in general. And him and Trey Lance, I love their relationship because they're only a couple lockers behind. Well, not behind, but necessarily down from one another. And I love they have that type of banter, because that's awesome. You need that type of fiery competitive spirit in the locker room, man. And Steve Young talks about that competitive spirit, man, and that brings the best out of you when you're going against them every day of practice and things of that nature with a guy like Jimmy Ward. So like I'm so excited that he's have opportunity, man, to kind of showcase his talent, not only on the field, but also what he brings as far as mentally and being able to show Hufanga, hey man, let's go out here and do something. Let's go out here and shake up some things because a lot of people might not know you as a great number two, but they gonna know you as a great number two being beside me. And so, man, that's what I'm excited about that part coming up in training camp as well.
Most definitely, most definitely. Now, flipping it to the offensive side to wrap today's show, what are you expecting from Trey Lance in training camp, if anything?
All right, I'm trying not to get too excited and calm myself down. Just so you know.
Trey area.
All right. So what I'm most excited about is just his overall command and comfortability, man, of the offense. And I think his ability, like we've heard over the last couple of days, that he's staying in another week just to make sure that he gets the little crossing his T's and dotting his I's. And I think what he's trying to do right now is tell the guys who were the elder statesmen in the locker room that, hey man, I ain't here to play no games. I know what Jimmy did. I respect what he did, but I'm here to not only learn, but to lead you guys. In order for me to lead you guys, I got to show you more than what I say. And so I'm so happy that he has the opportunity this offseason to be like, hey, man, I'm looking forward to him to make what seems difficult extremely easy. We all know about, I think you brought up a great point earlier on when we first hopped on about Anthony Lynn was his ability with Austin Eckler and Melvin Gordon to catch the ball out the backfield. Like we Niner guys, we know last year our running backs didn't catch too many balls out the backfield. You know what I mean? The flats were just wide open. We didn't really necessarily use it when our running backs were coming out. And so I really believe like those passes, those little dink and dunk flat passes, man, coming out for this OTAs, well not OTAs, but for the training camp, That's what I'm looking forward to. Him being able to consistently make those little short area passes into the running backs, give them the opportunity to catch it in space, boogie on some people, you know what I'm saying, and pick up those easy yards or getting 5 to 6 yards, man, because that would be essential in our offense because George Kittle would bring in the linebackers. Brandon Ayuk would take the the top safeties, take the safety from over the top, and Debo him running diagonal routes or running drag routes will kind of converge the corners and bring them more so into the bound, not into the boundaries, but into the hash lines, things of that nature. So the flats will be open, and so that's what I'm hoping that throughout this training camp, Trey Lance just be cool, calm, and collective, and show that feathery touch. You know what I mean? In the words, I love basketball too, so just show that jelly. You know what I'm saying? Having the ability to be like, woo, woo, like, okay, Trey, I thought you was just a fastball throw. He's like, nah, I got a cutter. You know what I'm saying? Nah, I got a curveball. I'm like, all right. So that's what I'm mostly looking forward to, just seeing him out there, just getting the easy things. Man, we're just making the easy thing look easy. So yeah, that's my thing on Trey Lance and coming up this training camp.
Yeah, most definitely. And I mean, Trey Lance, like, you know what he is right now. He's composed. He seems like he's a veteran when he's talking to the media. He has the attitude. He's got the work ethic. He's got all the traits you want out of a person and a player. Now, what I want to see is on the field, can he remain accurate and can he remain consistent in that way? And then the other point that you brought up is touch. How does that touch go over an 18 games period? I thought it improved. I thought it was really good in the Houston game in that second half. I thought he delivered with pretty adequate touch, and I thought he worked really well off balance. That's something that he has to him. I want to see, can he be an NFL level quarterback at an accuracy standpoint throughout the training camp portion and or throughout the offseason so far. I think he's thrown at a 74% accurate clip, but that's without pads. That's without a pass rush. I want to see how does he work now with a pass rush, and how does he work with probably on his plate and with pressure in his face. And then I also want to see the like you talked about composure, right? And you talked about the mental makeup of Trey Lance. I want to see like I know he has that. I just want to see the from the processing part. I want to see the throws being made. And I believe he has the entirety of the ability to do so, even if it requires a slow start in the NFL. I think the 49ers can afford that. But to me, can Trey Lance put it all together, put the pieces together that he has over an 18-game period? That's the one question we remain to see. Although I think he's got all the pieces to do so, and I think he himself has the ability to do so.
Hey, that's why like the running game will be essential for us, man. And I think also like we seen last year with Jimmy, like Jimmy didn't come out here, he didn't throw for 4,000 yards, 30 touchdowns. Like that wasn't his game. He keep it. What's up, though, Sadiq? You know what I'm saying? Like Trey Lance, I mean Jimmy, he kept it simple, and so we can only hope that Trey Lance is giving the grace again to do what Jimmy did in the first part of the season, the first 6 weeks, because it wasn't pretty. We were one of the worst third down conversion team there was out there. Nobody
Yeah,
talks about that, but we was terrible on third downs with Jimmy Garoppolo. Like we couldn't get off. I mean, we got off the field. We couldn't stay on the field. And the sad thing was that like 49ers red zone, right? We were so proficient in the red zone, but we rarely got a lot of opportunities down there because of our insufficiencies on third down. And so, like for me, as long as Trey Lance gets the ability to go in there and have the opportunity to make a little mistakes and get kind of like just accustomed to the pace of play, and because I think that's the hardest thing. I played sports my whole life. I coach sports. I do training and so on and so forth. So like a lot of times, the higher the competition, it takes you a moment in time to calm your adrenaline down because you want to perform so much, and when you're playing against upper echelon talent that you got to bring your A game. So like you just like you revving, you ready to go. But it takes those repetitions to kind of allow the speed of the game, the quickness of the game to become normal. And so for Trey Lance as a young 21-year-old young man, I think it was just like, everything was really fast. He didn't get a lot of repetition. He get a lot of repetition with the first team reps as well, or first team reps as well. And
Yeah.
so I think this offseason, having the ability to play with the first team, having the ability to go out there with some of the most skilled guys like a George Kittle, with a Brandon Ayuk. It won't be Sherfield no more. It won't be Jawan Jennings. It won't be Gabriel. What I'm thinking, was it Gabriel? What was my guy name? The skinny guy with the locks. We used him as a Benjamin.
Benjamin, Kelvin, or Travis Benjamin. Travis
Average
Benjamin.
Benjamin. See, he won't be playing. He wouldn't get those reps with those guys. He'll be getting reps with guys that he actually have to go out there and play with. And so for me, just seeing what he's going to do with those guys, man, that's what I'm excited about. Just pace and repetition. Because in any sport that you do play with, when you're on the top of the top level, it's not, you can do everything you have to do in the film room or on the practice field. But until you go out there with them zebra stripes and they got them shoulder pads on, and you're able to go out there and get hit and see how quickly these guys are going, like they say, live bullets. And I think he has the mental capacity to grow and excel with reps. And so that's what I'm most excited to see for Trey Lance, just the repetition out there with some of the best guys. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what you just said is pure sense, and it just shows the optimism, right, for Trey Lance. I understand that national media hasn't necessarily been on that wave the entire time, but right now there is a sense of optimism towards Trey Lance. I think he silenced it with how he performed so far. Next step is training camp, and if Trey Lance can continue to be how he's been during training camp, with all the other external factors included, he is in a position to succeed, and the 49ers should have a successful season like many anticipate. But Twin, it's been an amazing show. Thank you so much for being the guest and hopping on today on this Monday before Warriors basketball. We had
Yes, sir.
great talk about some 49ers football. Again, make sure to shout out your YouTube and your Twitter links, and yeah, we'll be on our way.
All right. Well, look, thank you again for having me coming on, man. I really appreciate the time and the opportunity. You can find me at Twin Empire here on YouTube. Make sure you like, subscribe to the channel or whatnot. And then you can find me on Twitter at Twin Empire times two. It's the one and the only guy with two sets of twins. So hit your boy up. I'm a 49er, red and gold to the day that I'm blue and cold. You know what I'm saying? So I'm so excited for the chance to hop on in here, man. I had a wonderful time with you, man. And just thank you. Y'all make sure y'all go like, click, and sub to my guy's channel as well. And we just go keep on doing our thing. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. And guys, we'll catch you tomorrow or sometime soon. And yeah, have a great day.